Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Public Safety Forum, hosted by the Chamber, with some very renowned speakers and guests today to present to you. Thank you all for coming out today. I'm Nathan Nottingham with the Chamber, and it's good to see you all again. So many familiar faces, and I like being able to say that now. I've been here a year and a half already. It's amazing. Time flies by. Right, Rhonda? Yeah. Well, we have a great presentation for you, and I just want to say, too, that we were working with the Downtown Association. They really are the core management for the downtown core, those 38 square blocks, and you will notice on this flyer that we're going to hear about some of the security concerns with downtown. We bring those to you not as a replacement for what the Downtown Association talks about and does, and we follow their leadership, but that all merchants and business people will know kind of what's going on. So if there was any confusion about that, I wanted to clarify that today, too. What I would like to invite up Consuelo Christensen, more often known as Connie to most of us, I think. She is the chair of our Program and Events Committee, but also the 2014 Woman of the Year for McMinnville, noted for her volunteerism. She's passionate about public safety and security and reducing the drug influences on our street. I mean, I'm really just proud of Connie, and she is going to be heading up and introducing our speakers. So Connie, would you come up today and say a few words?
Good afternoon, everybody, and I want to thank you for taking time out of your day to be here today. We have, as you saw in the flyer, Sergeant Joe Shipley with the Yamhill County Interagency Narcotics Team. I had the privilege to work with him when he was a detective, and now he's the sergeant of the team. And he brought McMinnville Police Department Adam Dean. We have the sheriff here, and he's going to cover not only just county issues, but probably touch upon a little bit about the marijuana and what does that mean to our community. We also have Director Ron Noble. He, as you know, is a retired police chief of McMinnville Police Department. And we also have the current McMinnville Police Chief, Matt Scales, who grew up basically in the department, being one of the ground floor officers, I believe, to now being the leader of that department. So let's give them a round of applause and thank them for being here. Right now, I'd like to start with Director Ron Noble.
Well, good afternoon. Last time I stood here, I announced to my staff that I was retiring, so this feels good, kind of good to be back. So my topic is security in the workplace. For those who don't know me, I should back up. I have a career of 28 years in law enforcement. Finished that here, 8 years in McMinnville as police chief, and now I work in the private sector at Linfield College as the director of public safety. And it's been a great transition, learning more about private security and safety and workplace issues. But I'm curious because it may depend on the size of your organization. When I say security in the workplace, how many think about physical security from violence coming into your workplace? How many think about protecting assets like electronic information, customer lists and stuff? How many think about internal theft and employee theft? Well, that's kind of sad because a long time ago when I had more hair and it was a different color, I worked in restaurants, and I know at least in restaurants, most of the theft is employee theft. Most of the violence is employee violence. And I would suggest that really hasn't changed a whole lot, but what has changed is in the idea of information. And with the exception of just a couple, I think most of us regard technology as something still new, as opposed to something that they grew up with. The technology's changed quite a bit in my lifetime. And with that newness of always change, we're a little bit more guarded than some of the younger generation. Anybody have one of these? Who has a password on it? Okay, now leave your hands up if you have a password on your phone. Take a look around. With a few exceptions, this actually matches some of the trends going on in that the younger you are, the less likely you have a password on your phone, and the less likely you take what we would consider normal precautions to protect your identity and your security of information, especially when it comes to mobile computing. You would think that would be different, but it's not. The trends show that the younger you are, the more likely you don't have a password, and more likely actually you're vulnerable, your systems are vulnerable, your information is vulnerable as you get into mobile computing. I don't know how many of your businesses involve some sort of mobile computing, but that's a real emerging, can't find my pocket, threat. How about physical violence? Seems to be the more and more often you hear about violence in the workplace, violence in schools, colleges and universities. How do you protect yourself? That was a real question. Planning. There's a lot of information out there. There are a lot of resources in here, and I'm just a quick commercial. We've got some very capable gentlemen down here, and I would include, I didn't call Connie a gentleman. I know the difference. Connie's also available. I'm also available. I work in the private sector now. It's really not too expensive to hire me. But there are a lot of people who can come around and give you ideas regarding target hardening. The trick is, and I understand, is balancing how approachable your business is and welcoming it is with the safety for customers, safety for your staff, employees, and all of your assets. Because you can build a fortress, and I'm going to go back to when we built the police department. We could have built one big solid concrete building, and it would have been absolutely the most secure building in this town, and it would have been a failure with regard to approachability and bringing customers in. Yet the first draft had nothing but glass, and it wasn't ballistic glass, just glass. You'd look and you see an open environment. So we could have been very approachable, very transparent, literally, and very unsafe. So that balance really is something that matches, it has to be specific to your specific business, your specific industry. And there are people out there that can help. I could probably go on, is that my timer? 3 minutes. I could go on for a while because I was just preparing for this. Just even a search of the internet of trends in business safety, business security. It's this big. And I guess one of the things I would hope that you would consider is looking yourself, identifying what the trends are, what's happening in your industry, in your businesses. With not much has changed from the sense that employees and ones you don't expect are probably still statistically the ones where your money's going out the back door, that you need to balance being welcoming with the safety of your staff and your customers, and then don't overlook that electronic, those things that are really proprietary, your customer lists, data, your finances, and any type of mobile apps. How many have a mobile, anything mobile or in your business at all? Even from an iPad that cashes money in. Yeah. Don't overlook the security issues and the need to protect that, because there are a lot of people that know how to take advantage of that. With that, I think we have a question and answer later. Is that right? Okay. Then I'm going to eat and let somebody else come up here and talk.
How many of you were around when we had meth labs? And meth was really the hot topic in our county. So I served on the narcotics team for 21 years, and helped, thanks to Mary Baker, we put on real estate, basically a meth lab training on what to do from the beginning to the end. And a lot of questions that are being asked is what happened to meth? We have Sergeant Joe Shipley here to talk about what is our current drug trends.
Hi, thanks for having us. This is Detective Adam Dean with McMinnville Police Department. He's assigned to the narcotics team also, and he's been there for a couple of years, 4 years now. I've been in law enforcement for 25 plus years, somewhere around there. I was on the drug team from 1998 to 2002. During the peak of the meth lab time in the state of Oregon, in particular in Yamhill County, I think we processed a little over 30 or 40 meth labs. And most of that was in the last 2 years of when I was on the drug team. We, in Yamhill County, were real popular for what's known as the Mexican National Labs, the super labs. They were producing anywhere from 20 to 60 pounds of methamphetamine at a time. Since I left the drug team, the meth labs, with all the precursor laws and everything that changed, reduced meth labs in Yamhill County and in the state of Oregon because of the fact that we made it harder for the producers of methamphetamine to make meth in the state of Oregon. But that didn't stop methamphetamine. Meth is now produced in other states like Arizona, New Mexico, and across the border in Mexico itself, and then brought up here through distribution routes that have been established since the late 60s, early 70s, and the outlaw biker gangs. One of the things that I do on the side is I teach at the academy, and I'm the primary instructor for narcotics investigations at the police academy. And so a lot of the stuff that I see on a regular basis is stuff that I gather for the training sessions at the academy. And since recently being reassigned, Sheriff Swenson assigned me back to the drug team in February to supervise the drug team. Adam has been there for 4 years. He knows more about what's been going on from the drug team standpoint for the last 4 years than I do because I've been on patrol. But I do know what's been going on throughout the state as far as what I've been learning through the academy and teaching at the academy. And methamphetamine is still here. It hasn't gone away. We could go out today and buy some if you guys want some. Just everybody pass the hat around and we can get you some. I don't know where you live, but I would say yes. The one thing that has changed, and it's just amazing to me, and Adam and I have talked about this, is when I left the drug team in 2002, I worked one heroin case, and that was in 2002, and it wasn't even heroin. It was a Mike and Ike's candy that the guy tried to sell me as heroin. So heroin was not even really heard of back then. It was one of those drugs that most people, if they did it, they didn't tell anybody because they didn't want to lose their source. Now, we buy heroin probably more than we buy methamphetamine. Just about every day we can go out and buy heroin. It's everywhere. And it's amazing to me how much it's grown in the last 15 years. And I knew this because of teaching at the academy, and I know why heroin is so popular now. And not to take up anybody else's time, and Adam, you can chime in. I'll share this mic. We can duet. What happened was in late 2000s, in my opinion, and by all the research, doctors have been overprescribing OxyContin, pain pills. They overprescribed it. I don't know if they get kickbacks from the pharmaceuticals or what the deal is, but they have been overprescribing it like crazy. And what it does is it creates a dependence on it. Well, OxyContin is a pharmaceutical of heroin. It's basically the same thing. And when you can't get it because you can't get your prescription anymore, you've got to turn someplace to find that. Well, you can buy OxyContin on the street, and it's expensive. What's the going rate?
It's about, depending on the milligram of the pill, it's 30 milligram pill would go for $30 or more.
So the price of OxyContin on the street, it's point for point, which means a 30 milligram pill is going to cost you about $30. So when you go home and look through your medicine cabinet, figure out how much you got sitting there. Come see us, we can hook you up. Heroin, on the other hand, it's cheaper on the street. It's easier to get than OxyContin. So people that were normally just use OxyContin for pain relief now are turning to heroin because they can't get the pill on the street as easily. And it's cheaper and lasts longer. So we're creating all these drug-addicted heroin addicts off of overprescription of medication. That is probably the largest trend that I have seen in the state of Oregon and in Yamhill County. There's still ecstasy, there's still marijuana, and we'll talk about that. Methamphetamine, cocaine, a little bit of acid every once in a while, just for fun. But heroin is probably the largest growing trend in the state of Oregon and in Yamhill County.
And are most people using it in a or how are people using it?
There's, go ahead.
It just depends. They'll usually probably start off smoking it, and then at some point they might start shooting it, using it intravenously. It basically, the kind of heroin epidemic started as about, I think, 5 years ago or so. The pharmaceutical companies changed the makeup of the oxy pill because what addicts would do is they would either crush it or melt it down and shoot it and to get the high, instead of the extended release where you swallow it and it's released over 12 or 24 hours, they are getting it instantly. Well, they changed the binder in it to make it significantly harder to be able to do that, to be able to melt it down and shoot it or snort it or smoke it. And so what that did, it essentially made these pill addicts turn into heroin addicts overnight because they couldn't get the high that they needed through the pill anymore, and so they had to go to heroin. And from what I've seen in my experience, the heroin addiction is the worst out of anything. If we bust somebody and end up, getting them to work for us and go after their supplier, obviously if they're working for us, they can't be using. Well, if we have somebody that's a meth addict, they're like, they'll say, okay, I'll, feel horrible for a day or so and then I'll be fine. Whereas if you have a heroin addict, depending on how bad their habit is, it might be a week or two before they're able to function because of the withdrawals. Obviously I haven't gone through them, but from what I hear and what I see, it's horrible. It's a very horrible addiction. So.
Yeah, if you guys are real interested in what withdrawals look like for a heroin addict, you can make arrangements with Sheriff Swenson to do a tour of our jail, and it really is sickening to watch somebody go through that. When they talk about people that are near death going through withdrawals, if that's what death looks like, I don't want it. We're getting close on time, so the other thing that we see as a trend that's probably one of the most talked about topics in our profession, and Sheriff Swenson is going to talk more about it, is marijuana and how the new marijuana law is going to affect us. Bottom line is we don't know yet. OLCC is the regulatory agency that's going to do all the inspections and issue all the licenses and do all that stuff, and we don't know what their plan is. I don't know if they really even have one. I'm going to a drug task force supervisors conference here in a couple weeks, and that is one of the topics that we're going to talk about. What is our stance going to be, and what are we going to do? It's going to impose a whole new perspective on marijuana use in our community, and it's going to be up to the board of directors, the sheriff and the chiefs, on how tough we want to be and how strict we want to be, and really it's going to cost a lot of money to prosecute these things, and so it's going to be the DA's going to have to be in there and the citizens on what direction we go. So if you have more questions later, Adam will answer them.
The one thing that I'd like to add about the prescription drugs, being part of the narcotics team, I was able to go to the same training conferences as the detectives, The prescription drugs, what's horrifying about that is, as a lot of you know, my daughter played sports. I thought getting her involved in something, keeping her busy, would lessen the chances of what I see through my job. And in one of the training classes with the prescription drugs, it was children just like my daughter that they were stealing the prescription drugs out of the medicine cabinet, out of your nightstands. Everybody kind of kept them out. We weren't really taught that you had to hide these things. And then you hide them in the commonplace, and the kids can find them. And that's how there are kids from middle to upper class families that died of prescription overdoses because it's so easy to get. So I'd like to remind you, if you have narcotic prescriptions that you want to get rid of, MacPD does have a drop box. I'm not sure if the sheriff's office does, but I know MacPD does. So just remember that, because you don't want it to get in the wrong hands. Next is Sheriff Svensson. He started his career at the sheriff's office. I remember when he first came on as, I think, a reserve or intern. And he did that with the narcotics team and was trained in all the different divisions at the sheriff's office. And he's going to talk about the county concerns and touch a little bit on the marijuana legalization.
Thank you, Connie. So, real quick, how many people have received a phone call from the IRS ever that said that you owe them money? And how many of you actually owed the IRS money? Didn't think so. So, that's the type of stuff that the sheriff's office gets to deal with. It's unfortunate in the state of Oregon that we have so many of these type of crimes that have no legal teeth to them. And I'll explain it in a way that I've explained it to a lot of other people, is that a lot of these crimes are committed from places way outside the state of Oregon, sometimes not even in the United States. The Department of Justice does not have active investigators that are able to go out and actively attack these type of scams. And these are the common scams that you see, and it's cyclic. It comes with the time of year. Tax season, you always see people calling saying, hey, you owe the state of Oregon so much money in your taxes, or you owe the IRS. My dad got a phone call from the IRS saying he owes them X number of dollars. And he politely told them, well, if that's the case, just send me the bill and I'll go ahead and write you a check. And of course they're like, well, no, we could just take care of it right now over the phone. The hard part is that there's so many people in our county and across the state of Oregon that truly feel that that is the case, and they fall victim to it, and there's no recourse to it. So the struggle from a county side is that our office, we try to do as much as we can to try to get as much education out there to citizens, and organizations like this can help as well. And the fact that when you hear those are the trends, you start talking with people and you start sharing it with people. Same thing with the county. If you fail to show up to a jury summons, the deputy and or the sheriff's office or a court clerk is not going to call you and tell you that in order to get out of the warrant that you're going to have now for your arrest for failing to appear on your jury summons, to just go ahead and pay the $1,400 today, we'll get you out of that warrant. That one was going on around our county where they're actually using a deputy's name from our office. It's a real deputy saying that they had subpoenaed you to court and you failed to show up for your jury summons. You owe the court $1,400, but for one-time deal today, we'll charge you $700, and that will keep the warrant out of the file, and you won't have to go do time in the jail. So these are the type of issues that we deal with on the county level. Our staff does a pretty good job of keeping a temperature on the state. We share information across the state through secured thing through Titan Fusion, which is managed through the Department of Justice. So any new and improved fraud or threat that we see, as soon as we get that information, we try to get that out to the public as quick as possible, because it's hard, because there are truly people who are good people that are victimized from these type of issues. And unfortunately, at this particular point in the state of Oregon, there's really no teeth for us to go after these people. And now on to Measure 91, the wonderful marijuana law. We saw kind of a snippet of it with the medical dispensaries, allowing the medical dispensaries to come through. I applaud several of the county officials and the cities that set up moratoriums to limit the setup of some of these dispensaries. The problem that I have is, as an elected official, I'm able to talk about my position on some of these things. And I'm a strong supporter of the fact that there are people out there in this community that can benefit from the use of marijuana when it comes to their illness. Albeit it's a small percentage. And that small percentage, it gets ruined by the rest of the state of Oregon who is using this program as a way to just legally possess marijuana. I think what you're going to see as Measure 91 continues to go forward, which is the legalization for recreational use, that the medical piece is probably going to go by the wayside. The OLCC has already said that they're trying to figure out how are we going to manage both. The medical marijuana laws have different restrictions than the recreational use, and it's going to be a conflict. For law enforcement, our number one concern, and it's shared with the city and pretty much all the agencies across the state, is we have yet to come up with a standardized test to determine what a legal level of marijuana intoxication should be for when you are stopped. Right now with alcohol, it's pretty easy. We give you a breath test, 0.08 is what has been standardized across the United States as the legal limit as to whether or not you're intoxicated. When you get into the marijuana world, it's a little hard. And my number one concern is that the citizens of Yamhill County are protected. Those who choose not to participate in recreational marijuana use are protected from those who choose to use it. If they want to use it at their home, that's fine, that's on them. Once they get behind the wheel of a car, law enforcement needs to have the ability to determine whether or not they're intoxicated at the time of a crash or when they're stopped. And right now, the only way to do that is through a drug recognition expert. And currently in Yamhill County, I think we have 4 that are currently on the list. Our office only has 1, and it's going to be a burden that's going to be placed on our office as we move forward, as this goes forward. July 1 is going to be the day in which you get to start possessing your marijuana and growing it. As Sergeant Shipley said, we really don't know how that's going to affect the state of Oregon. We are watching Washington and Colorado to kind of see where it's going. Colorado's proposed dollar amount that they said they were going to be bringing in tax revenue was significantly less in reality when they actually calculated what they've actually collected. It's a lot less than what they projected. And so the revenue stream that they are projecting for the state of Oregon, it's going to be a little dicey on whether or not we actually see that come in. And at the same time, with that breakout, 40% of it goes straight to OLCC for regulation. 10% of it goes to law enforcement for education and prevention. The flip side to the State Sheriff's Association and the Oregon Association of Chiefs of Police for adamantly opposing the passage of 91, put them on the back end along with education, put them on the back end of any funding that is going to be coming and generated from this revenue. Because we weren't at the table at the beginning, so we're not going to get any funding on the backside. So we'll see where things go after July. Hopefully things will go very smoothly in our county, but I anticipate it's going to be kind of touch and go. The hardest part is a lot of citizens come to me and say, okay, what happens if, and after July, I look in my backyard and my neighbor's got marijuana plants growing next door, and I don't want my kids to have to see that or to be around that. Unfortunately, there's nothing we're going to be able to do about that because recreationally, they can grow that in their backyard. So I'm sure you guys will have more questions about other trends. I'm going to let Chief Scales come up here and talk about a little bit of the downtown area, and we'll go from there. Thank you very much for having us.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate the invitation today, and our counterparts down here, they do awesome work. I'm friends with all of them, and they serve this county very well, and they serve the city well. A little bit about me, and I'll be real brief because I think we're coming up pretty close to the the crunch time is I've worked here for about 22 years. As Connie had said, I rose up through the ranks. I graduated from college and was fortunate enough to get hired by MacPD. And through the years, I've worked the road, worked as a sergeant on the road, worked investigations as a sergeant, where we handled multiple, the felony crimes, that sort of thing. Ultimately promoted to captain and worked on both sides of our office. One is the special operations side, which would be the side where YSENT detectives are housed, and then the other side is the field operations side. So which is patrol of the backbone. The guys you see in the black and whites, the school resource guys are in special ops. But by and large, I've done both. And Ron was gracious enough to train me up a little bit, and the city was, depending on what side of the coin you land, I was fortunate enough to be appointed in January. Some stuff that's going on here in Mac. I want to touch on the downtown. I know Connie had said that. And I know throughout the years historically, our downtown core, especially as the summer comes around, it's become problematic with some of the juveniles, the young adults that are having a difficult time probably integrating into society a little bit, as I'll say. I'll use that politely. But what we've done, and I think we did a really good job last year, is we moved our park ranger program, which is the rangers are the ones that service the city park and out at Discovery Meadows, and they do stuff down at Joe Dancer. We moved them into more of a dual role where they are now downtown ambassadors. And we partnered with the McMinnville Downtown Association. They brought some money forward, and the city brought some money forward. And I believe this fiscal year the city is adding more money, and I don't believe we're going to be relying on the McMinnville Downtown Association for any funding. So we really did see a benefit, and that benefit paid off by it depends, I guess, on what side of the street you are on. If you're at the east or the west end, it ended up being really good. But if you're down at Tommy's Bike, where the summer finally ended, where the problem continued at a reduced rate, it wasn't as successful for him. But long-term solution is we've already started the Downtown Ranger program, which is going to have somebody downtown, and they'll be working, and we're going to get a jump on that problem. Because we want all the businesses, we want the merchants, we want the customers coming back, the visitors to feel like they can feel safe and have an opportunity to really experience what McMinnville's all about. So we've got that in line. That is going forward, and you will see probably 8 downtown rangers or downtown ambassadors / rangers working throughout this year, and they will work into October. So I think that's a very, very positive thing, and I think we're going to see better results because we're going to be on top of it. Last year we got into it a little bit behind the curve when we had to deal with some stuff that had already erupted down at US Bank Plaza. I know if you work down here, you noticed the 15 to 20 kids that were, or I wouldn't say kids, young adults. There are 20, 21-year-olds down there that were causing the problem. So we got a little late start, but on this year, my direction to Captain Marks and our staff is to get a foothold on that. I will also say that currently our personnel situation allows us to, we talk a little bit about the homelessness issue, some the transient population that frequents downtown. What we've done, started really, I would say in August, is we have an officer that's, I would term a liaison officer. That officer has worked significantly with a co-op during that time, and he's actually now working with First Baptist. And the goal of that program with him as a liaison is, one, not to just have periodic contact, but it's ongoing contact with the population to let them know that we're not out just to arrest them, that we are looking to provide or help them find services that they need. McMinnville is the hub of services for the Yamhill County. So with homelessness sometimes comes mental health issues, and we are dealing with that as well. So this officer is also recently graduated from the CIT training. So he is going to be partnering with the COSs, which are community outreach specialists, or housed out of Health and Human Services out of Yamhill County, and he's going to be the direct conduit between making proactive contact with the homeless population that are experiencing mental health issues, and really trying to get them plugged into services or trying to help them before they're in crisis where we're having to arrest and or take them into our director's hold. So we're really trying to get on the front end of stuff before we're having to deal with the court system or clog up, I almost called you Captain Svensson, Sheriff Svenson's jail. So that's a little bit about the downtown, and I know smoking's a big deal downtown. We met with the McMinnville Downtown Association yesterday as a city, and there are some, if you work down here, if you own a business down in the downtown core, there's going to be a survey. I'm sure that Cassie Sollers will be sending around, making are getting a gauge on what type of commitment the downtown businesses have to whether or not they want to make downtown the historic area, probably 1st to 5th, Adams to Irvine, whether they want to make it downtown a smoking ban. So I know that is coming up. So be aware that may be coming up this summer as something that comes before the council. We're not 100% sure. I know the city manager wants the businesses to have 100% buy-in as a whole before the city's going to even take a look at that sort of ordinance. But I've got a couple minutes. Let me share a couple programs that we moved forward with, and I know Connie and I'll call him Ron, but I usually call him Chief Noble, was we've rolled out a program that Captain Marks found down at a conference, and this is a really unique program dealing with sexual assaults. It's a program called You Have Options, and I think it's really on the forefront of where you're going to see policing and investigations go, where it's really a victim-centered, not that we weren't victim-centered before, but it's victim-centered, offender-based, really trying to capture in both sense, capture as much information that we can against the perpetrators. They're committing a lot of the crimes. There's, I would say, I don't know what the statistics are, but it's a vast number of the sexual assaults are committed by a small percentage of the community. 1 to 2 people can wreak havoc on a community. So what we've done with the You Have Options program is really changed our style of interview techniques with the victims and given the victims a little bit more power. It's not that we're not going to be taking the sexual assaults, we're just going to be going and investigating at their pace. If the victim's not ready for a grand jury or to be interviewed, if she wants to be anonymous at the time, that's fine. We're going to take the report and we're going to continue to monitor the status of that report. And as more victims or other victims come forward and we can correlate the information, background information about how the sexual assault occurred, who the perpetrator might be, it's really giving the victim some more power to move forward maybe as a group versus one when they're not comfortable being the lone person going in front of a grand jury or a jury. So that's a program that's really innovative. I think it's going to show, we're going to give, again, the victims, I think, make them whole. Not that we have been doing things wrong, but I think we're going to do things better. So that's where MAC is right now with that, and I wanted to touch on one more thing. If you have a business, and this was sold a couple years ago as a trespass enforcement agreement. If you own a business and you are after hours, you don't want people loitering in your alcoves, what have you, we've got a program, and you can go to macpd.org and pull up an application, and all it is, it's free. You sign a document essentially saying as business owner, if the police are at your business after hours and you find somebody loitering, and we find somebody loitering or sleeping in the alcoves, and you've had historically a lot of problems, you've tried your best to encourage them to move on throughout the years, and finally you're tired and you don't want to get woke up at night, that's probably the key. That's a plus for the business owners or the business managers is we can take enforcement actions based on your signature that you want to move forward with trespass. And that generally just does a really good job of making sure that these people are moved on and that you guys aren't woke up in the night. So please, if you're interested in that, take a look and see if that's something that can help your business in the long term. That's what I've got. If you want to know more statistical information about what's going on in MAC, crime-wise, crime reports on our link on our website, macpd.org. We'll tell you a little bit what's going on in your city. And I know we've had some stuff going on lately. We had another shooting this weekend. And I say another one. We've had some violent crime occurring. Now that's a trend. You want to know, hey, what's going on in MAC? Are we just all of a sudden exploding? Well, historically, yeah, we're trending up a little bit. But in our 2014 Part 1 crimes, they went down slightly. Part 1 crimes are the most violent crimes that a city can experience. That's a homicide, rapes, that sort of thing. They went down slightly. But I tell you what, these big cases that the detectives are going out on, that I'm getting called on in the middle of the night, they are on the rise. Even though the rapes might be going down, we're seeing more violent crime. And I think the sergeant and detective and Sheriff Swinson would concur that those are problems that we've got to get a grip on. And whether they're gang related or not gang related, whether they're drug related or not drug related, we need to figure out a way to make sure that our entire community is safe. And if you've got suggestions, we're willing to listen because quite frankly, we're tired of seeing the stabbings, seeing the shootings, that sort of stuff going on. And if we can get a resolution that's long term, I'm all for it. So, yes, ma'am.
Is there any place in the United States that has banned soliciting in their town or in their downtown core area?
Like you talk about panhandling, that sort of thing?
I'm talking about panhandling, yes.
I'm sure there are communities around. Our state statute and constitutionality The Constitution, it would be illegal for us to impose on somebody's First Amendment rights, free speech, that sort of thing, right? So we cannot go and arrest somebody for panhandling. Even though there is a panhandling ordinance on McMinnville City ordinances has a panhandling ordinance. It's not enforceable, unfortunately, because it does protect the person's right to free speech. We do have some ordinances about blocking sidewalks, that sort of thing that we can enforce. But the panhandling is unenforceable. It's constitutionally protected. Well, I believe it's gone all the way to Supreme Court. So if you've got a number to them, I would. But you know, if you're talking maybe a scaled back city ordinance, it's not as. We have to protect everybody's rights. That's 100%. That's my goal is protect their rights. Freedom of speech to go and ask people for the money. I mean, or whatever, food. That's where it falls under. So it's protected right now. I'm sorry.
On the Albertsons shopping center parking lot, there's an old beat-up horse trailer abandoned in the back of the lot for a couple of weeks. And this morning I noticed a house trailer that joined the other end of the back lot. Is it up to the property owner and those sort of things to monitor?
Well, if it's actually on Albertsons property, it is the property owner's responsibility. If it's on the backside of Albertsons, that's I believe is that Linfield? That's your guy right there.
We talked about it this morning.
There you go. Director Noble's already on top of it. There you go. Yeah. But if it's on city street, city right away, that's ours. We'll take it. But apparently it's on Linfield College property, and they're on top of it. Yes, ma'am.
I worked with your community mediators in Panhandling County. Several years ago, former Chief Ron Noble and I and some of our board members were working to put together a training for police officers for not just the police department in McMinnville, but for all the county law enforcement, for conflict resolution skills, mediation skills.
Yeah.
At that time, it just didn't work out because of everything's scheduled.
Right.
At the same time. But I'm wondering, in yours and other law enforcement agencies, what is the trend for teaching officers conflict resolution?
Yeah, de-escalation. Well, I know it's taught, well, perfect example is Sheriff's Champion CIT training throughout his department. My department's probably lagging a little bit behind about getting our officers through CIT, but CIT is an excellent training where we're dealing with mental health people or anybody. These are skills that you can translate into other. That's where they talk about verbal resolution, conflict resolution, talking somebody down. So I would say as a profession, especially I'll speak for MacPD, we do a really good job of trying to de-escalate the situations, but I'd be happy to entertain an idea from you if we can get that in-service training. I'd be happy to talk to you about that, and if there needs to be something formal or if you've got an idea that I'd be happy to listen, and we can certainly take a look at that project.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a couple of more questions, and I'm not sure they're for you, but for some of the other speakers that we have. The first one being, I heard them say that heroin can be a couple of weeks as far as downtime and withdrawals, and meth is just a couple of days. That didn't appear to be the message when meth was a really big item. The message was, once you're a meth addict, you're always a meth addict, and it's one of the worst things to ever be in at. So the message that I'm hearing today is completely opposite of when we were at the height of being in the meth world. Is this just more information has been learned, more treatment has been successful? I'm just really confused by that.
I was actually talking about the withdrawal symptoms. So once somebody's an addict, I don't know if they're an addict. I guess they're considered an addict for life. Heroin users, they could be clean for 10 years, but they think about it all every day. So it's just the initial withdrawal symptoms when your body is addicted to it. It takes a certain amount of time to basically get on the right track and move on. So that's what I'm doing.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yes. And then I think it was the sheriff that said testing for marijuana use and driving and all that kind of stuff. Did I hear you say that it required a blood test to measure it? I didn't quite understand what you said. But we want and you only got one.
Yeah, the issue with marijuana is that very time intensive. We bring them into our office, they blow a 0-0 on the machine. We bring in a drug recognition expert who takes their blood pressure, who runs it through all these different tests, gets blood or urine, sends it off to the crime lab. 3 months later, we get a result back saying, yes, they had marijuana in their system at the time to stop them. The question's going to be, well, did they smoke that day? Were they high at the time that we stopped them? Or is it just because they had marijuana in their system because they admitted to smoking marijuana 3 weeks ago? So that level of intoxication is going to be the concern. We have to be able to prove at the time that we stopped them that their impairment was caused by this particular drug. And it's going to be very hard for law enforcement because right now it's easy. If they're doing their thing and it's kind of like alcohol, we take them down, they blow up a 2-1, they're arrested for DUI. It's pretty easy.
I guess my comment would be that on 424, the watch is coming. It's going to save the world. You know, there doesn't appear to be any research or technology or scientific way to have somebody in the officer's car to measure that at the time.
The issue is that you got the Food and Drug Administration and the federal government who are already saying, that continues to say, marijuana is an illegal substance. So there's no one out there who's willing to put their name on a test to be able to say, oh, you can smoke up to this amount and still be okay to drive. Because federally, still, it's not legal to smoke marijuana on the federal side, so possess it. So the issue is, I think the technology's there. I think the state of Washington and Colorado have been working on it. The Measure 91 has a piece in there that says OLCC will work with the medical field to try to come up with a test. The issue is that no one out there wants to put their name on this test because federally it's funded, and no one wants to fund it. And federally it's still illegal, so how do we determine whether, because once we say, well, you can have up to 20 nanograms or whatever that they measure that in your system and still be okay to drive, then what's to say to the federal government, well, why should this still be considered an illegal drug on their schedule?
So it's a big picture.
Correct.
Well, I would also say that a part of DUI driving is the impairment piece. So the officers are going to go through their standardized tests, and if there's some impairment, that would be fine. But the ISAC when we go to conviction time is that test. So do we marijuana, DUI marijuana? I think that will occur. It's a long process to get the test results back, and again, it is like, but these people are still going to be mandated to blow your arrest. If you blow a jail, you show them coming out of, you blow a 0.04 in the jail, out at the scene, because for whatever reason you don't drink a lot or what have you, you still are impaired. You are impaired. So you can be convicted just even if you aren't.
So you can still make a line, or if they're weaving in and out of traffic or whatever.
Oh yeah, and that's the enforcement piece will still be there. The hard part is it's going to make it much harder and much more costly for law enforcement to get that test done and to go through that process. Because the standard practice right now is the chief said, if you go in and out and you're doing all this impairment, we get you to jail, you blow under an 08, but the impairment that they showed on the scene said, no, they're intoxicated, they're on something, then it requires us to contact that drug recognition expert to come in, tell us what they're intoxicated on. It could be a prescription drug, it could be oxycodone, it could be Vicodin, it could be heroin, it could be all that stuff. So it's just going to be problematic in the long run. The other piece I didn't touch on that's really hard to fire is that we get a lot of our DUI arrests on the crashes. And those crashes are reported to us because the first responders that get there to the little vehicle in the ditch and determine that there's no injuries are those responders from these volunteer fire departments. And if they don't see the impairment like they do now where they can smell alcohol, they may not call us because it's just a vehicle in the ditch and there's no injury. So we're trying to put together some training for all of our first responders to say, here's some things you need to be looking for impairment when it comes to marijuana, so that if you do get out on the scene and we haven't shown up there yet, you can request us to continue to respond.
So is there a video when you arrest somebody that can be used as evidence as well?
The city of McMinnville's got video of cars with the sheriff's, the body cameras, oh, that's a whole nother topic.
You know what, though, that does what she's saying, that seems to me would solve the problem. You just film the people doing they can't walk and they're falling over, that's all you need.
I was love to see that simple.
We'll fix that. We'll get rid of all that drug testing and all that money.
If it was that easy, I would have a DA.
Excuse me a second, I just want to say it is after 1 o'clock, so if any of you have to leave, but I'm sure everybody here on our guests will be willing to answer questions. So thank you, Chamber, for having us. And also, if there's any topic out there that you would like the Programs and Events Committee to host, please contact Rhonda at the Chamber or myself. Is there any other questions out there? Thank you all for taking time of your day to be here.